Is your actual vote next election still Labour? I feel like however Waterdown Starmer is, it's still worth rouse the Tories, right? So that's the next subject I wanted to talk about, because there was ruminations of the idea that the Conservatives might raise corporation tax, which is phenomenal, really. I never thought they'd do that, because that's where their donors are. Like, during the pandemic, huge corporations have gained billions and billions of dollars, whilst and pounds, I guess, too. Whilst people have been on the streets, people have been going homeless, people have been unable to, feed their children, all that kind of stuff. Like, the Tories have then said, oh, fine, I guess we have to raise corporation tax to pay for our huge COVID bill, which is a reasonable amount of based. I'm not going to call it fully based because it's a Tory policy, but it's a reasonably based, right? To say that maybe these corporations should pay their fair share. Now, I understand that there are a lot of small businesses that haven't coped as well during the pandemic, and their increase in corporation tax is going to hurt them. So I actually would probably say that we should have a tiered corporation tax system like we do with income tax, and we probably should have that with capital gains too. It makes more sense to have all of our taxes tiered rather than just income. Because at the end of the day, regular people who get income taxed, whereas, rich people only get, like, corporation taxed or will get capital gains taxed. So these should be stratified in the same way that just stratified income tax, but that's neither here nor there. In a brilliant move of left-wing populism, Keir Starmer has said that we shouldn't have a corporation tax rise. And I'm like, excuse me, what? What kind of... This is the man who claims to be a socialist during his time as campaigning for Labour Party leader, saying that we shouldn't raise corporation tax? What the fuck is this shit? This is the guy who's supposed to be the leader of the party of the working class, saying that we shouldn't raise tax on the people who've had billions of pounds of revenue during a pandemic. This is fucking ridiculous. Like, it's absolutely insane to me that the Tories are saying rise in corporation tax and the leader of the Labour Party is not. What the fuck am I supposed to do in this case? Like, is my actual vote in the next election still Labour? I mean, it was until this point. Now I genuinely don't know. Like, I always said, like, maybe Labour are definitely better than Tories. My general feeling, right, with Starmer, even though he's done a lot of things that I disagree with, I feel like as far as leftists go and, like, left-wing activism goes, appealing to electoral politics has become a dead end, and it's always going to be a dead end because essentially the corporations control all the power in electoral politics nowadays. Trying to change our perceptions, change other people's perceptions, when the mass media paradigms that are being pushed by these corporation-led media apparatuses is going to be difficult to fight against. I don't think the electoral politics is going to be the way we're going to win. Like, I genuinely don't think we're going to have another Labour government for plenty of years. My point had always been that as far as left-wing activism goes, the only way we're going to do it is through the unions, through collective action, collective bargaining, and direct action. Like, and our best way of collective action is with the unions, right? Now, the Labour Party have always, even during the Blair years, were historically funded by the unions, right? All of their funding for their party platforming, through their own wages and their own kind of internal mechanisms were funded by the unions. So I always said, my point was always that regardless of the direction that the Labour Party goes, as long as they have union support, I would vote for them. Because at the end of the day, what we need to do is maximise the level to which we can personally go collectively organise through the unions. And the way we maximise that is by having the party that is beholden to the unions in power. But Unite have started pulling funding from the Labour Party. Keir Starmer has started courting possible private donors for the Labour Party. So how true is that now? Especially since we've seen this kind of course correction with regards to actual left-wing issues from Keir Starmer. I don't think this is going to be where my vote can go. I don't think it really matters, seeing as I live in Manchester Central, or I'm actually, to be fair, when I move, I'm going to be living in Broxtowe, which is actually currently a Liberal Democrat constituency. But either way, if Keir Starmer is going to take this position on something that's so obvious from a left-wing position to be the correct idea, even though it's the Tory party doing it, it's difficult. It's going to be difficult thinking whether we're going to be able to vote Labour at the next election. I'd always said, like, I thought there was a lot of unqualified vitriol towards Starmer at the start of his time as Labour leader, and they were just like, it's not Corbyn, we hate, we love Corbyn, we can't have anything other than Corbyn, blah, 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 blah. I think both the left and the right have spent too much time talking about Corbyn. Like, leftism and socialism are not popularity cults. I think that we spend too much time talking about Corbyn as, like, a figurehead for leftism, which we should stop, right? Because first of all, it gets us nowhere, because his name doesn't have anything attached to it that's going to be able to recruit people to leftism anymore. Just in the same with the name socialism, communism have very little to do with being able to recruit people. I think most people are kind of settled on their idea of whether socialism is bad or good right now, and we need to be able to talk about these with regards to individual issues like workplace democracy and unionization and collective bargaining, like terms that don't have like assertion, like things associated with them that are going to drive people away from them, right? Because collective bargaining is just a good way in which we can, and workplace democracy are good ways in which we can talk to both the liberals and also apolitical people, because that's another group of people who we can recruit to leftism and socialism. Using words like workplace democracy and collective bargaining and unionization are ways in which we can bring people to our movement without pushing them away with words that have bad connotations, right? And the same thing happens with people like Corbyn and people like Sanders, and like, I mean, Sanders less so, because I think his name is a little less what's the word I'm looking for? Like, divisive. That's what I like. Sanders is way less divisive than Corbyn. But having Corbyn as a figurehead for leftism in the UK means that not only do we have baggage that we need to get rid of, but it also allows people to attack us for that baggage, right? When you look at Keir Starmer's kind of policy platform that he's pushing forward at the moment, in his kind of like media apparatus that he's trying to, or the media kind of paradigm that he's trying to push, right? None of it's like pro-Labour or pro-XYZ. I guess it's kind of talk about being pro-business and trying to do like brand kind of marketing about that. A lot of it is just, I'm not Corbyn, vote for me. And we help him with creating that narrative by being so centred around what Corbyn did to the Labour Party. And we need to stop that. We need to stop thinking about Corbyn because it's bad for us and it gives people ammunition against us. We need to talk about individual issues, and we need to be able to create political discourse which talks about those issues individually, like unionization, like collective bargaining, and union membership as well. We need to impress upon our workmates, who might be very apolitical or maybe liberals, that the only way in which they're going to be able to make their life better as a member of the working class is through, like, with regards to like an employment sense, is through unionization. We need to impress that upon people, because then whether Starmer kowtows to the unions at the threat of them pulling funding, or whether the unions completely break away from Labour and move to a different party, we're going to be there to be able to reap the benefits of that. So whether I would vote Starmer the next election, I'm not sure. It's going to be difficult to convince me to vote for Starmer, but I'm not necessarily opposed to voting for Labour, but Labour if they're still the best vehicle with which we can use to create an environment that's conducive to collective activism through the unionisation process. Does that make sense to people? Like, it's a touchy subject, especially with the policy platform he's pushing for now. Like, so for example, like, one of the things he talks about in his a manifesto when going for Labour leadership, one of the things he was talking about was a nationalisation of certain amounts of industry. Now, one thing has actually been nationalised through the COVID pandemic, and that is the rail network. So the rail network is being entirely run by the government now, but just with the franchisees still actually maintaining the actual services, right? So Northern Rail and Arriva and Southwest Trains and TfL, they're all doing their thing, but the government's taking all the profits, taking all the risk, and just paying them a franchise fee to be able to run them. Now, the rail system in the UK is fucked. It's completely fucked. So the stations are owned by franchisees, and other franchisees have to pay to use them. So it's been completely like sectioned off into these own areas of non-competition. So the privatization process doesn't work, right? But because they basically no one's traveling during the pandemic, the government just said, right, okay, well, we're just going to take away all the risk away from you and take all the reward away and just leave it to like these kind of like these skeletons of the rail network whilst it's not being used, whilst still maintaining some amount of profit for these companies, right? They're just franchises. Like, when the pandemic ends, you can just not renew them. You can just not renew the franchises, and we can just bring the railways into public control. And, this could be an issue that Starmer could fight about in a post-pandemic world. But he spent too much time not backing the teachers' unions by trying to get kids back in school. He spent his time not backing, the idea of a raising corporation tax. He didn't oppose the spy cops bill or the military torture bill, just abstained. Like, I can't give a proper answer on whether I would vote Labour, rather than kind of speculating on where, the platform of the Labour Party might be in the next election. I'd have to see the manifesto, of course, to be able to judge properly. But at this point, based off what I've seen so far, it's not looking particularly good.